Today we'll be going through a horror movie titled Bloody Hell. The movie begins with a scene of a little girl who ran out of her home in fright in Finland. She ran through a dark, thick forest. At one point she stopped when she heard a man calling out her name, Aaliyah. This made her panic and she continued running. The man later caught up with her and her father told her that she can't escape from her family. While being scared, she jumped into a river, but with her family around, she definitely can't escape from her terror and they saved her from drowning. In Boise, Idaho, a man whose name is Rex can be seen in a queue at a bank. Feeling delighted about seeing his crush, Rex tried flattering her, but suddenly, some thieves enter the bank, shot into the air and ask everyone to lie on the floor. The fear of being killed made everyone obey, but later, Rex saw a gun in a woman's shiny red bag. When she noticed that he saw the gun, she quickly hid it properly. Rex tried to calm his temper, but as luck would have it, the woman's bag was dropped on his body and he stared at the bag surprisingly like gold was dropped into his palms. Later at a court, Rex was commended for his heroic act of saving the people, but a lawyer condemned his action because he caused a poor soul to die. So he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. When released years later, Rex was shocked when he saw that he was still in the newspaper. While trying to pay his bills, the people recognized and they all began looking at the known psycho hero. At a restaurant, the press kept disturbing him and he began to see a vision of his mind which is a reflection of himself, and his reflection helped him to release the anger he was holding up while he stayed cool. Later, he went to a friend's place, Pete, who was surprised on seeing him, but yet again, he was followed by the press. While discussing, Pete got scared, but Rex calmed him and told him to bring out his belongings, so Pete brought out an old carton and in it was Rex's passport. He told Pete that he was going to Finland, and he explained that he chose the country because he had shot a spitball on the map while in the cell and it landed on Finland. The fact that nobody would know him, nor will anyone call him a psycho or a hero, made the thought of leaving the country excites him. In Finland, while dark at night, a man can be seen screaming in fear and running through a thick forest, but suddenly he fell. Later, he hauled onto a tree but was slowly pulled away by a beast. At the airport, where Rex was to leave for Finland to start a new life, a woman called her husband's attention to Rex and they both began talking about him. A man who has heard their discussion went over to Rex and he warned him that the couple had said that they would get him for their son. But because Rex didn't understand the meaning, he ignored the man's words and went to the toilet. But something funny happened while he was urinating. The creepy man showed up at the toilet and this got Rex alarmed. But he went back to take a seat in front of the couple, and when the woman gave him a creepy smile, he smiled and waved at them. In Finland, he tried to avoid people, but when he noticed that nobody seemed to recognize him, he began walking happily and later boarded a taxi. On their way, the driver looked at him through the car's front mirror and slowly released a gas which soon filled the car while he covered his face. When Rex woke up, he saw that the driver had locked him and he struggled to free himself, but his attempts proved futile and slowly he passed out. Aaliyah has grown into a beautiful lady and she can be seen reading a story to her little brother Olavi. Minutes later, they heard some noise and Olavi wanted to check what was happening. But Aaliyah stopped him, she closed the door and continued reading the story to him. Later, the house began shaking and the little boy's fear grew. In the lower room of the house, the family can be seen trying to fix dinner, while at the base of the house, Rex can be seen. He woke up in fear and noticed that his hands were tied to the ceiling of the building. A pebble ball rolled over to his leg, and when he looked at the floor, he saw that one of his legs had been cut off. He wanted to scream out in fear, but the vision of his mind stopped him and helped him to scream out his frustration. While thinking of what to do, his mind told him not to make a sound. In the room, Olavi was disturbed, so he placed his ear to the floor to make out what was happening, and then he slowly secretly left the room. Rex's mind continued talking to him, and he discovered that it was the creepy couple that had kidnapped him. Looking at the bicycles around, he realized that he was in a family building. He used his teeth to loose the rope, but he failed, but then luckily entered the basement and Rex pretended to be asleep. When he saw that it was just a little boy, he opened his eyes and stopped him from leaving. He spoke to the boy, telling him to come closer, and when he was within reach, he quickly used his leg to break the little boy's nose and held his unconscious body with his leg. Aaliyah noticed that Olavi wasn't in the room, so she walked carefully to the basement in search of him, but then she closed her eyes and called out his name. When Rex spoke out, she opened her eyes and he told her that he would release her brother if she would give him the knife on the floor. Mistakenly, Olavi rolled off his leg, and while Rex reached out for the knife, Aaliyah took it and carried her brother away from the basement. She hurriedly called her parents and lied that Olavi got injured because he rolled off the bed, so he was rushed to the private doctor. When they were gone, she fell on the bed happily, and began fantasizing about a happy moment with Rex. The doctor treated Olavi and told him that it wasn't a fall that caused his nose to be broken, and this got her parents very upset with Aaliyah. At the house, Aaliyah took a first aid kit to the basement and she tenderly attended to Rex's injury while he groaned in pain. When she was done, she confessed her feelings and told him about her monster brother, Potty. It was then that Rex realized that his body part was being served as a meal. From little, Potty would often bite their father, and as he grew, he continued to feed only on human flesh, so her parent kidnapped people for him. While he was eating, she would close her eyes in fear, but her mother would scold her. She further explained how she had tried running away from her weird family, but her attempts were unsuccessful. Later, they locked her up in a cage but was later released because Patty was fond of her. Rex quickly snapped her from her thoughts, so she would help him, and she placed the knife close to his leg. He picked up the knife and tried using it to free himself but failed. When they noticed that her brothers were around, she quickly hid while Rex pretended to be asleep. So her brothers checked the basement and later went to Aaliyah's room. When they saw that she wasn't in her room, they went back to the basement and caught her speaking to Rex. She was dragged out while Rex was injected with a substance that caused him to laugh for a moment before blacking out. Then he remembered what had happened in the bank years ago. His mind had told him to kill them all after the bag fell, so he took the gun and began shooting the thieves. While the people watched, they praised him for his courageous act, and he became so popular that the news showed the video publicly. But his mistake, which caused him to be jailed, was when he caught a thief holding his crush at gunpoint. The thief agreed not to shoot, and his crush ran away safely, but then Rex swiftly shot him at his lower part, which caused the thief to shoot at the door, and unknowingly, a worker was at the door, so she died. While having the thoughts, Rex suddenly woke up and angrily kicked off the man who was about to cut off his second leg. The man tried to attack him with a syringe, but he quickly set himself free and used the knife to stab the man in his ear. While breathing heavily, Rex applied tape on his leg, drank a bottle of water, and packed necessary instruments that he might require. His mind began telling him to save Aaliyah, but he didn't want to. He helped himself out of the basement with a metal object that he tied to his leg. On his way out, he reconsidered and planned to save Aaliyah. With the knife in his hand, he limped to the door and opened it. But then the couple came back, and on entering the house, they noticed traces of blood on the floor, so they ran quickly to the basement. Their two older sons, who were sleeping, woke up to the scream of their mother, and later the family looked gloomily as they thought of what would happen to them if the authorities were to learn of their secret. Later, Aaliyah's brother spoke out and told them that Aaliyah had gone underground. Before speaking further, he shakily drank water, but suddenly blood began gushing from his mouth, and Aaliyah's father, and they died. Her mother screamed out in fear, and Rex, who had been hiding under the table, began to attack the other brother. When he came out from his hideout, there were no longer nails in what he used, so they began fighting, and he killed the last son by accurately throwing a knife at his stomach. The two lovey duo looked at each other and sighed, feeling relieved. But suddenly, Aaliyah's mother woke up and screamed out to her mother's son, so Aaliyah swiftly took her rope in a bag and strangled her to death. They thought they were free, but Patty slowly stepped down from his room, which made Aaliyah shiver in fear. On entering the dining, he flung Rex off and he grieved his mother's death. Rex shot a gun at him, but it didn't affect him, and this made Rex so scared that he began to explain himself, but Patty attacked him. Rex then held onto a fridge handle, but it opened and he saw the remnants of his leg that was chopped off for dinner. He stared at it with mixed emotions and began imagining himself happy because he found his chopped off leg. He took the remnants and stabbed Patty with it in his wide open mouth, and the sick monster dropped down dead with the bone piercing him. He and Aaliyah breathed a sigh of relief and later left the building in a car with their young brother, Olavi, and they smiled lovingly at each other in the car. Months later, they kissed in the presence of their friends, and Rex narrated the story of how they met. But Aaliyah wasn't listening because a lady kept flirting with Rex, so she took a knife and cut off the lady's neck, but it was just an imagination as she tried to calm herself. Then the crowd stared at Rex awkwardly as he told them that he killed Aaliyah's family. In a dark room, Olavi stared at his family picture, and for revenge, he said it's time for an American banquet. The end. What do you think about this video? Kindly comment below and stay tuned for updates on more interesting movies.